Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namaswami. There's a story that I like to tell sometimes when people enter the spiritual life in one form or another. And it's a story about some kids playing hide and seek. And the kids are playing hide and seek, and there's an adult who's supervising, who's watching. And the kids are playing, and so one kid, of course, gets chosen to be the seeker, and everybody else goes and does the hiding. And so there's this one kid that figures out the perfect hiding place, just like the perfect place. And they go to that perfect place and hide. And so the kid who's the seeker is looking and looking, and they find one kid and they find another kid, and they still haven't found this one kid that's in the perfect hiding place. And so time goes by, and the seeker keeps looking, and the adult is watching all this happening, like, what's going to happen here? And so, but it is actually the perfect hiding place. The kid isn't going to get found by this kid who's doing the seeking. Until the adult goes over to the kid who's hiding in the perfect hiding place and says, "Hey, kid." The kid says, "What?" He says, "Get found." Exactly. It's kind of funny, right? Get found. Get found. Because the game is not about finding the perfect hiding place. It's actually about getting found. And in a way, our practice is about that as well. It's about a finding, about a discovery process, about what's going on in this body and mind. It's not about hiding out from that in some special place or in some special state of mind or behind some kind of funny clothing or any of that. It's a path of discovery of what's already here. And that happens, in large part, it happens, I would suggest, most skillfully in relationship. That's the get found part as well. There's a get found that happens in our inner world. But there's also a get found that can really only happen in relationship to other people. In a way that we can see something in one another that perhaps we're not ready to or able to see in ourselves yet. So there are any number of different kinds of findings that can happen on the path. One of the things that very commonly starts to happen is seeing our patterns of mental experience, our mental formations, and the kind of tendencies that we happen to be in whatever point of practice we're in. So that's one thing that people often talk about. They experience on the cushion as they start to experience different aspects of their mental patterns or mental habits, their tendencies or things that perhaps they had put away in a quiet place for a while. They had hidden away. And then it becomes safe enough, and quiet enough, and still enough that those things start to pop out in various ways from their hiding places. one aspect of it can be found, can be discovered on this path. And in terms of the relationship aspect, I think I've spoken a couple of different times about there's something that is sometimes called mirroring, a way in which when we are in intimate relationship with one another, we can show, we can demonstrate, either gently or not so gently, the things that that we are experiencing in another person. And so one of the sort of theories, one of the frameworks that I found very helpful in terms of thinking about this is something called the Johari window, which is a framework about how people develop trust. And it says there's an aspect of you that is known by you and known by others. That's the kind of public self. And then there's an aspect of you that's known by you, but maybe not known by others. It's kind of hidden or held back. But there's this, and so that part, you get to choose which parts you're going to move from or not going to move from your inner world into this public area with other people. But then there's another part, which is the part that you don't see about yourself, but that others can see about you. And my dear, one of my dear teachers, Zenke Blanche Hartman Roshi, whose name means inconceivable joy. Zenke used to say, like potatoes in a sack. We bump into each other, and then you start to see the stuff that falls off, or that stays on, or that seems the same or different between us and our fellow potatoes. She's from the South, so you can imagine this analogy was like very real for her, this metaphor. But anyway, that is a process that builds trust also, but that requires some trust, right? That we are in a close enough relationship with people that we feel that we can receive a little bit of what they're saying about what they've experienced about us, and take that in, and know that they are doing that in a way that is not going to be harmful. So there's some trust that can develop in the intimate relationship, and that also, I would suggest, then opens up other inner possibilities of trust, of awareness, and of discovery that are happening for us. So this is one layer of Get Found. This is I would suggest an aspect of Get Found that is about the discovery of the self, the very conventional self in many ways. And that's important. It's not to say that that's not important. Because those aspects, those so-called mundane aspects of the self, are equally demonstrating some of the more universal principles. And that's where I want to go with another aspect of the talk. So, within this discovery process, then there can emerge this kind of intention of more skillful self that has the aspiration to be on the path, or that has the aspiration to live the precepts, or that has the aspiration to awaken to the true nature of what this is. And when that starts to happen, then there can be also this finding out about what the precepts mean in terms of harmlessness with regard to, again, with regard to ourselves, and with regard to the folks that we are in contact with. Right? So the precepts, if we think about them as ways of describing how karma actually works, and then they can help to inform why why it's skillful to take them up. They can help to inform our kinds of our view about the world and the way that we enact that view. So the precepts can begin to open up even more levels, even more kinds of space of discovery of what is, how does karma actually work, how does the skillful interrelationship between beings actually affect what is going on in this body, in this karmic stream of consequences, vipaka, that's arising. So we can move into a more skillful self over a period of time, a self that is taking up more and more wholesome activities, more and more wholesome expression in the world, more and more wholesome inner experience, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we think about other people, the views that we hold about how things actually work and whether those are more in line with teachings, with the Dharma. All of those things can begin to happen. And again, that's an important step. I think that's another I think of it actually taking up the precepts as a sort of stepping beyond the boundaries of small stuff and start to see how there is this much greater form of interactivity of these five skandhas with over time in terms of thinking about karmic consequences, and in space and with people. It can be this much greater view than this kind of very constrained, very constricted self that is very perhaps focused on its own needs, its own perception of wanting and not wanting. It's something that sees itself as part of a greater dynamic, the karmic dynamic. So that's another step in the process of getting found in the larger world, in the larger reality that is happening. But I want to suggest that, and that all of that is a great practice. Any one of those different ways of thinking about the discovery of what's happening here in this lifetime, and turning toward that in a skillful way is great as a full practice in and of itself. And I want to suggest, however, that we don't have to stop there. I read something a while back by a Dharma teacher and the statement was something like, our practice is all about just accumulating as much wholesome activity, doing as much wholesome activity and accumulating as much merit, as much benefit, as much wholesome activity as we possibly can in the lifetime. And I thought, well, I wouldn't stop there, actually. I think that's a bit of a limited view. Because ultimately, while the path of wholesome activity and skillfulness, and continuing to refine our view and continuing to refine this process of discovery is wonderful, it's actually not about an accumulation process. It's about a process actually of relinquishment. It's about a process of cessation. So with that, I want to bring up a sutta that, a piece of a sutta, because it's a little bit longer one. It's from the Majjhima Nikaya, from the Middle Length Discourses. And I brought the exact quote with me and the exact title of the sutta, because it's, as many of the suttas are, the title of the sutta is the name of the person who is being addressed. And the name of this person is very long and complicated, so if I mangle it, you'll take my apologies in advance. It's Uga Namana, Uga Namana, Samana Mundika. That's the name of the person that's being addressed in this sutta. Okay, so, and this person was, what was he? He was a seeker in the Buddhist time. He was one of the ascetics. He was not a Buddhist ascetic. He was an ascetic, just a wanderer that had about 300 followers, it says, in the sutta, and one of many folks who had stepped away from mundane lay life, or even Brahmanic life in that time, the Buddhist time, and taken up this kind of ascetic life, in terms of just seeking what did it mean? What did it mean to lead a spiritual life or a holy life? He was a wanderer of sorts, and he had his group, his band, and they were said to be quite the rowdy band, actually. In the sutta, it talks about all of the things that they were talking about that they're not supposed to be talking about, like war and like, different kinds of rebirth, and about wives, and about this and about that. There's all kinds of long list of things that they were all chatting about. But in any event, what happens is that there is this master builder whose name escapes me right at this moment, and maybe I'll look it up before we go tonight. But a master builder who is one of the Buddha's lay disciples. And he can't go see the Buddha because it's at a time that is a quiet time at the monastery. So he says, well, I'm not going to go over there. I'll go hang out with Uganamana and his rowdy crowd for a bit and talk to them. So he goes and he asks him, well, what do you think is the best thing, the best practice? Because you're a wanderer and that's what you do. It's like sit around all day long and think about what's the best spiritual life. And he says, not doing harm with acts of body, speech, or mind, or one's livelihood. That's what I think is the highest. And so, sounds pretty good. But so this master builder goes back to the Buddha and says, hey, this is what Uganamana says. And what do you think? Is that right? And the Buddha says, well, even a baby could practice that. So that's part of it. He says, well, I got 4 out of 10. I would give it 10, but these are 4 out of the 10. And he does use the baby as an example, actually, an infant as an example of how to practice before. But the reason why he says that that's not sufficient is that he says that there is also, in addition to the arousing of skillful states and maintenance of skillful states, there's also the cessation of skillful states. That's the other part. The cessation of skillful thoughts, cessation of skillful deeds. How is it that one is practicing toward that? So very interesting way that the Buddha is pointing at this much broader, again, like a whole nother stage, a whole nother step of broader view of ourselves as integral to something that is not in the scope of skillful or unskillful. So here's what he says. He says, where, this is a rhetorical question in front of me, where do skillful habits cease without trace? And I want to add that this is Thanissaro Bhikkhu's translation, as it was recorded in The Island, which is a book by Ajahn Pasana and Ajahn Amaro about Nibbana. It's a combination of the path and absolute peace. Put it simply. Where do skillful habits cease without trace? Their cessation, too, has been stated by the Buddha. The case where a practitioner is virtuous but is not defined by their virtue, or as Bhante Sujata translated, not identified with their virtue. One discerns, as it actually is, the release of awareness, or that's what he's translating there as release of awareness is Chaita Vimutti, or the liberation of the heart, the liberation of the mind. And the release by discernment, or Panya Vimutti, or the liberation by wisdom. Where skillful habits cease without trace. So the question, what the Buddha is suggesting here, I would propose, is that there is a possibility for us to see how integral we are to these principles of reality, like impermanence, like karma, and to see, to actually live into our absolute harmony with that. Such a harmony that there isn't a generation or a judgment or falling into skillful or unskillful. You see what I'm saying? So in that way, then skillful actions cease because the harmony is so absolute. It's like there's no wave created. There's no positive or negative wave created at all. There's just the realization of the nature of the way things are. And a clarity about that, an absolute clarity about that. It's possible. So this is, I would suggest, the ultimate aspect of Fit Found, to find ourselves as mere phenomena that are expressing these principles. And in that way, we are absolutely in harmony. So will that person act skillfully? Of course, that person will act skillfully because that person realizes to whatever degree, to a small or complete degree, that person, once you know those principles, and you understand yourself as an expression of those principles, then you are by nature in accord with that. You wouldn't resist it. It wouldn't make sense. So to give you an example, which I've used here before sometimes, it's like the hand. So if you are the thumb, if I'm the thumb and Heather is the pointer finger, and I say, look at us, we are quite different, right? You're taller and skinnier than I am. You have a different function, right? We look different. We have different number of joints. We exist in a different place in the world. All of these things, and I look if I focus on that, and I say, wow, there are these tremendous differences between us. Right? And it's then I have to really work in order to understand this kind of skillful relationship. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to work at, for sure. And if I understand and Heather understands that we are all part of the same hand, that we are completely integral to the fabric of impermanence, to the fabric of karmic activity, then it's not so hard for me to see that we are the same expression. We are hand. So I would never harm her, and I don't have to work so hard. Or I wouldn't try to take something from her, because we are all the same hand. So in that way, there is the possibility to go to the place where skillful habits cease to trace. So I really want to encourage you all to get them. Do not look for the fantabulous, most impossible, most perfect hiding place in your life. Do not be discouraged. Right? Do not be discouraged when you find that it's work to be skillful in relationship, to be skillful in relationship to your inner world or to your perceived outer world. Because that is part of getting found. That is part of the work of discovery that we're doing with each other. Mm-hmm. And really encourage you also to not slip into a view of the spiritual life as this process of greater and greater accumulation. And actually, the peace is to be found in discovering our integration, discovering our harmony, discovering that we could relinquish everything that we perceive that separates us from harmony that we have with everything. And that is my plea to you this evening.